To many, the sword of truth is not available, for they are ignorant of its existence and lack the understanding of its power. There are some who are aware, yet its power escapes them, for it is really not theirs to wield. Then there are those rare few who, like a samurai, wield the sword of truth to right wrongs, lift the downtrodden, reorient humanity, and to speak truth to power. Frederick Douglass was one of those. So was Shirley Chisholm and Bobby Kennedy. One of the greatest of all who wielded the sword of truth was Martin Luther King Jr. Jane Elliott is another warrior who consistently wields the sword of truth time and again, which she uses to educate and strengthen humanity to the awareness that there is only one race, and that is the human race. Jane is an internationally known teacher, lecturer, and educator. After the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. in 1968, distraught at his killing, Jane devised the controversial blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise that has been taken all over the world to businesses and corporations, colleges, and universities. The now famous exercise labels participants as superior or inferior based on the color of their eyes and exposes them dramatically to the experience of being a minority for several hours, exposing prejudice and bigotry for what it is, an irrational class system based on purely arbitrary factors. Jane has written the book, A Collar in My Pocket, Blue Eyes, Brown Eyes Exercise, which is available on her website and on Amazon and other book sellers companies. She was awarded the National Health Association's Award for Excellence in Education. You can find more about Jane Elliott at janeelliott.com. Enjoy the interview.
But right now, pale faces are scared. They're afraid of how they're going to be treated in the future. So in order to keep them in the majority, number one, we are closing Planned Parenthood clinics because Mr. T. Rump in the president's residence thinks that he can keep women from having abortions by closing the Planned Parenthood clinics. Oh. And you need to realize that he has been successful in that because in 1987, 60% of the fetuses that were aborted were white. Last year, 2 years ago, only 39% of those fetuses were white, those aborted fetuses. So he's getting right along to where he wants to be. You also need to know that the reason we need to build a wall on the southern border of the United States is because our president has said we have to keep those brown-skinned people out of this country because brown-skinned people reproduce too rapidly. These are all attempts to keep pale faces from becoming a numerical minority in the United States of America. Wake up and realize what's going on here. It has nothing to do with stopping the spread of racism. It has to do with encouraging everyone to believe that there's only one race. And you can't have races against one another, but you agree that there's only one race. Because then it becomes people of color, different color groups, we have to fight over skin color.
Okay.
Please.
Okay.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, don't apologize. No, so one thing I'd like to do, Jane, is to
To favor freedom and yet deprecate agitation. Our men want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the roar, roar with many waters. Frederick Douglass said that, and
I remember that. I love that. And that sort of truth is so important, and you wield it with such force. It's amazing.
Listen to this. A black man with woolly hair and feet of bronze told us, "You must know the truth, and the truth will set you free."
Was that a black man? Really?
Yes, he was. He was Ethiopian Jew, for heaven's sake. He wasn't pale. He wasn't fair-haired. He wasn't blue-eyed. He was an Ethiopian Jew, and he was black. And in the Bible it says he had woolly colored hair and feet of bronze. Let's get over this nonsense. We white people, we pale faces, have even changed the color of Jesus Christ in order to make him look like someone we can relate to. I refuse to go along with this. You know, I didn't lose my job. I left my job when I was teaching because I refused to go along to get along. They didn't fire me. I could still be teaching there today because I could teach every child to read. I could teach this table to read if I had allowed. But I wanted to leave there and attract and educate a larger, older audience.
Yes.
And that's why I left teaching. You need to realize that I wasn't run out of town. I took my children, put them in a different school, and went back to teaching in that same town. And they never asked me to leave. The administrators never asked me to leave. So, yes, what I'm saying is unpopular. I'm not about popularity. I'm about leading people out of ignorance. You don't do that by mollifying the people who have the money and who are supporting the institution. Because the institution of education in this country is a training institution that trains you and indoctrinates you instead of educating you. We've been doing that long enough. It's time to start educating instead of indoctrinating. And you can't do it by saying the same old thing that you've been hearing for the last 280 years in this country. All right?
Okay, I hear you 100%. I wanted to ask you, Jane, first of all, when did you feel, at what point in your life did you feel that you carried that sort of truth with you?
When my father said, "If you're going to lie, don't lie to me." He never told a lie. He was absolutely opposed to lying. When he said, "You don't judge a book by its cover." And when he said to me, when I asked him why I was praising his cousin, who had such a good bootleg hooch still in northeastern Iowa, well, I said, "Dad, you told us never to break the law." He was breaking the law. And he gave me that Lloyd Johnson look and said, "Did you ever watch your kids starve to death? You don't judge a man by what he's doing. You judge a man by what he has to live with. You judge a man, you don't judge anybody according to Jesus Christ, but you better not judge him by his activity. If his activity is keeping, that's the only way. And during the Depression, that's the only way poor white farmers could keep their kids alive, some of them, was to make money selling bootleg hooch. You need to realize that circumstances dictate many of the things that the people of other color groups, other than the pale-face group, do. Circumstances dictated by pale-face people who write the laws, read the color law, who write the laws, and then judge people by the way they behave, the way they look, the way they live, as a result of racist laws written by racist people who are good Christians.
Wow. So
when I realized that I had to make a difference in myself. We were living in Waterloo, Iowa. My husband worked for a major grocery store chain. They were transferring him from Waterloo to Fort Dodge. We owned a house. We put our for rent sign ad in the paper. A woman called me and said, "Do you rent to coloreds?" Oh God, I remember so clearly what I thought at that point. I thought, if I rent that to her, we're going to be sent back here, and the neighbors won't have anything to do to us. And I said, "This is an all-white community. Oh, this is an all-white neighborhood." And she said, "Okay, say thank you and hung up. And I realized immediately what I had done.
Oh, wow.
I had defected to the enemy. I had done what I had to do, I thought I had to do, in order to make the money, get the house rented, and not be in trouble with my neighbors. And I learned then what I'm saying to you now.
Wow.
I will not go along to get along. I will not make my remarks acceptable to big men. I'll never do that again. And at that point, I decided, well, you defected to the enemy once. What are you going to do from now on? And I've never done it since. And I won't. I'll give up love. I'll give up my family. My mother kicked me out of the family after my father died because I've embarrassed the community, embarrassed the family and the whole community because of blue-eyed, brown-eyed thing. I'll give up neighbors. I'll give up money. I'll give up everything but my religion, my faith in God, and my knowledge that there's only one race on the face of the earth, and that's the human race. And I will not give that up. Victor Hugo said, no power on earth can stop a man with a dream or an idea whose time has come. We killed Martin Luther King Jr. because he had a dream. His dream is more alive now than it was when he was living. The idea of one race, the human race, is an idea whose time has come, and I am not going to give it up. And eventually, it will prevail. And that's what's happening with these protests. People of all color groups, all age groups, all religious groups, all cultural groups are coming together to fight a common evil, which is racism.
Yes. Yes. I have noticed in your interview or in your exercises that the people who are in the disenfranchised group become emotional very quickly.
They not only become emotional, when you do it with, and it isn't just children. When I do it with children, the first time I did it with children, I had 4 dyslexic boys in my classroom that year. They were all brown-eyed. Brown-eyed boys, brown-eyed kids were on the top on the first day. And on that day, those brown-eyed boys read words I knew they couldn't read, and spelled words I knew they couldn't spell. And at the end of the day, Billy Thompson came up to my desk and said, Miss Billy, where's my spelling paper? I said, what do you want for, Billy? He said, I want to take it home and show it to my mother. She thinks I can't spell, and I can. He was crying, and I was crying, because we had been led by his previous teachers to believe that he couldn't learn to read or spell. The wrong people were called guilty of that. If they had known how to teach him to his special needs, he could have read and he could have spelled. And he learned it on one day in 3rd grade. He never went down to being a non-reader, non-speller after that. On the other hand, I had in my classroom that year a tall, blue-eyed, blonde-haired, the symbol of the perfect American girl whose father was a minister. And she came in the room reading at the 6th grade level in 3rd grade in February. She had never multiplied. I taught her how to multiply the first 15 minutes of class. She never made a mistake in multiplication again until the day she had the wrong color eyes. And on that day, she made mistakes in reading, she made mistakes in spelling, and she forgot how to multiply. She came in for recess crying. I said, what's going on here? As she walked across the playground, 2 brown-eyed Betty, the brown-eyed Cindy, stepped up behind her, struck her across the back with her forearm, and when Carol turned around, Betty said to her, now you have to apologize to me for getting in my way because I'm better than you are. And Carol apologized and came in crying. I watched that brilliant, blue-eyed, tall, blonde, beautiful young girl turn into a frightened, intimidated, unable to perform academically as a result of being treated unfairly for half an hour. What do we do to children of color when we send them into school districts and we send them into classrooms where teachers stand up in front of them and say, when I see people, I don't see people as black or brown or red or yellow. I just see people as people. They never put the word white in there because they see white, and it's all right to see white people. We make racist statements all day in classrooms all over the United States of America. And the most disgusting statement we make is constantly calling this country America. This is only part of the Americas. America extends from the northernmost point of Canada to the southernmost point of South America. But we're going to build a wall to keep people who aren't Americans out? Holy cow. It makes no sense. So it is 14th, 15th, 16th century thinking in a 21st century world. Those who absolutely are determined to keep their 15th, 16th, and 17th century, then they, for vocabulary and learning, then they must also give up television, give up electricity, give up running water, give up inoculations against dread diseases, walk instead of ride, go back to living the way they did in the 15th and 16th century. If you don't like that, if you don't want to give those days up, then you'd better give up your racism.
So I see that you are considered to be the forerunner of diversity training, Jane.
No, I'm not. Don't call me the forerunner of diversity training. I don't believe in training people. You train dogs and cats and horses to behave, to react to certain stimuli in certain prescribed ways.
Okay.
You do not train people. I'm an educator.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. Diversity education. Now,
thank you.
What do you feel? I mean, we have come to this point where everybody is in the street protest. I'm going to say everybody. So many are in the streets protesting. White, black, brown, all kinds of people, in Native American or American Indian or Native Americans. How do we go from here? Is it possible for us to, I know it's possible for us to heal. Where do we go from here? If you were running this country, what's the first thing you would do?
I would re-educate the educators. I would send them all back to school to learn true history instead of the history that they were taught in social studies classes K through 16, grade 16. I would re-educate the educators. I would force them to read books like The Color of Man, like Francis Cress Welsing's The ISIS Papers, like Harari's book *Sapiens*, and I would force them to read the National Geographic magazine for April of 2018. See those two girls on the cover?
Yes.
Those are twin girls. Those are twin girls.
Wow.
Are they members of different races? Hell no. They're members of the same race with different color in their skin.
Amazing.
I would force them to read this magazine first. In fact, before teachers go back to the class, and they're teachers instead of educators, I turn them into educators by forcing them, requiring that they read that magazine before they get back into a classroom. Because that is the bare bones of what you need to know in order to educate students out of the ugliness of racism. First, you have to stop talking about different races. There's only one. First, you have to stop saying, I wouldn't want my daughter to marry one. You have to realize that you can't cross a cat with a dog and get a dad or a frog. But you can cross people with different colors and get brilliant, beautiful, educable, wonderful children who are going to be running, have been running this country for years. Because if you would trace your DNA that far enough, every person on the face of the earth, if you trace your DNA that far enough, you would find a percentage of your DNA came from a country in Africa. Because we are all descendants of those first modern human beings, and they were black. The only reason we aren't all black is because they moved away from the equator, and the farther north they went, the less melanin their bodies produced, because their bodies needed the rays of the sun in order to help them to make vitamin D, and that's what sunlight does for you. But if there's too much sunlight, and people, the first modern human beings, had very, very dark skin because they were exposed to a lot of sunlight. As they moved farther north, they were exposed to less and less sunlight, so their bodies produced less and less melanin. It has nothing to do with being God's chosen children. Get that into your heads.
I wonder, there's two.
And you wish I was yes or no?
Two things come up. One is that you always talk about the fact that the educational system is more about indoctrination rather than education.
Absolutely.
And I wonder whether or not these DNA companies are running their tests back far enough in order to find that. I wonder whether or not these companies that are doing DNA testing are running their systems or their tests back far enough to be able to find the connection to Africa.
The person who is getting his or her DNA test explored need to say, I want this to go back as far as it can possibly go. I want to know the truth about my very beginnings, not just that I came from England. Not just that I'm Caucasian. If people had been raised, if people had originated as Caucasians, they couldn't have lived through the first winter. So let's take this back as far as you possibly can. my nephew said to me last summer after a family meeting, he came outside, he said, Jane, I got something I want to tell you. I said, what is it, Jim? He said, I had my DNA traced back as far as it could go. And I'm 0.001% of my DNA comes from a country in Africa. And we high-five one another. And I said, Tim, we were right. Or he said, yeah, we were right. I said, why didn't you tell that to Sam? He said, I didn't think he'd accept that. I wanted you to hear that. So you see, he's smart enough. He would do what you want him to do. He would go along to get along. And in his head, he would be thinking, I'm doing the wrong thing, but it's going to keep the sponsors happy. And if he gets funded, if I do the right thing, I won't do that anymore. I won't do that. If being funded or being wealthy means I have to go along to get along, I'll be dirt poor. Now, no, you're not going to leave that in here. Mike was absolutely right. He was absolutely right. And yet he praised his cousin for running a fantastic bootleg still.
Wow. So
to do what we have to do. We're talking about contradictions here.
Yes, we
and
are.
Every one of us has in our minds, in our bodies, in our spirits, in our religion, contradictions. We do the right thing for the wrong reason, and we do the wrong things for the wrong reasons.
So all we have to do is ask the DNA companies to go as far back as possible.
And if there is no black in it, they haven't gone far enough, because we are all ancestors of those first modern human beings. And if they don't go back far enough, you have the right to say to them, did you find that my DNA came from outer space? Because if there is no black in it, it came from outer space. And I want to know which planet it came from. You have to challenge the experts.
Okay. So here's another question. So what have been some of your key learnings after sharing your exercise, your brown, blue-eyed exercise all over the world? What's one of the major takeaways you've learned?
That it's difficult to educate people who don't want to learn.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree. That ill-based people will hang on to the myth of race just as fast, as hard as they can, for as long as they can, because for many pale-faces, that's their one claim to fame. Image is the fact that they aren't like those people. But they absolutely resist. Somebody has said denial is not just a river in Egypt. It's what we white folks do on a daily basis. We deny the very fact that makes us human. The very fact that we are ancestors of those first black modern human beings. That's the hardest thing there is, to get past that denial.
Have you been able to, in as hard as it is to train or educate people who refuse or don't want to let go of whatever that is, that belief, have you found some that have actually acquiesced, let go, and finally realized it?
Thousands of them.
Excellent. Excellent.
And I had thousands of them. And I had done the exercise with thousands of people. And I've done the speech to thousands, more than thousands of people, many thousands of people. And invariably, when I get done, there are pale-faced people crying, and they'll say, I didn't know. Why didn't somebody tell me? And I say, why didn't you look it up? Why didn't you read something other than those modern romances? Why didn't you realize that the longer you stay in school in this country, the more bigoted you become? Why don't you self-educate? I gave you a list of things to do, a list of books to read. Before you start crying, wipe your eyes and go buy one of these books and read it. And then you won't have anything to cry about, because you'll know what's wrong, and then you'll do what's right, instead of knowing what's right and doing what's wrong.
What's wrong. And I would advise everyone to look at Jane Elliott's website, Jane Elliott, ELLIOTT.com, where she has learning tools available, a huge bibliography for everyone to access, and questions that are very provoking. I love those questions. What do you call them? What do you call that? I had it here somewhere. There's that yes, commitment to racism page. And then you have the
Clarifications? No, no. First you have the typical statements.
Typical statements, that's it. She has.
And then the clarifications of those statements, how they are received by the person hearing them, and then the commitments to combat racism. 18 things you can do in your own environment to deal with your own racism. And now a whole bunch of liberal white women, if you still have any there, are thinking, well, this is a societal problem. No, societies are made up of individuals. When individuals change.
And well, first of all, I want to thank you, Jane Elliott. You are a force of nature.
Wait. Before you do that, look at this. See that?
Yeah.
That's the Peters map of the world. Do you see Greenland on that map? Clear up at the top of the map, a teeny tiny little place.
Yes.
The sizes on this map are right. The shapes are distorted. The sizes and locations on this map are right. I hand this map out at every college to which I give speeches so that every student has this to carry home with them. Go to odtmaps.com and order copies of this map. Tell your people to order copies of this map and put it on every classroom wall in every city in the United States. The Boston schools now are using this map instead of the Mercator projection map. That's the one thing that I would hope everybody would take away from this, because the Mercator projection map, Mercator was commissioned by the Pope to make a map that showed the spread of Christianity. And because of that, the white countries of the world take up 2/3 of that map. And the equator is 2/3 of the way down the map from the north. You need to realize that that is a piece of racist learning material and ought to be taken out of the schools. Wow. And this is a good, it's not, this one isn't perfect, but it's a whole lot closer than the Mercator projection is. And if you look closely at that, you'll see that the equator is at 0 degrees on that map and divides the world into 2 equal portions. So that you can use the word hemisphere when you use this map, because hemisphere means half a sphere. But if you use the Mercator map, you can't use hemisphere because the Mercator map shows the world divided into 2/3 white countries and 1/3 countries of color.
Wow. So it's ODT.map or ODTmaps.com.
ODT, you see it? Can you see it?
Yes, I do. Maps.com.
ODTmaps.com.
Perfect.
And tell them you heard about this from Jane Elliott. Not because I'm making any money on it. I'm not. I don't get paid for selling these maps, but I do get paid in satisfaction, knowing that other people are going to have a different view of the world because of the people who publish this extremely important piece of educational material.
Okay. Now
we're done.
No, I want to ask you, Jane, is there anything that you feel is extremely vitally important that we haven't touched on that needs to be expressed?
The effect of racism starts prenatally. Black and brown women don't get the same prenatal treatment that white women do. And they don't get the same treatment during delivery that white women do. And I'm not making that up.
No, I'm hearing
a group of midwives called and asked me to talk to them. And I said, look, I know nothing about medicine. I was delivered of 4 children in 5 years, but I didn't deliver them. I know how to make them, but I don't know how to deliver them. And they said, that's not what, you know that, and so do I. They said, that's not what we taught you, we need you to talk about. We are all registered nurses. We are midwives. We have seen what happens with black and brown and white, so-called white women in the delivery room. We know that the treatment is not the same. We are midwives because we will see to it that women of all color groups get treated fairly in the delivery room. That's extremely necessary for people to know, that we don't start with you in kindergarten. We start with you prenatally, and we don't stop after you're dead, because there are places in the United States where you can't be buried in the cemetery because they don't want black folks in that cemetery because they don't know what you're going to do when you get down there. Now, this is as ignorant as you could possibly be, but that is what it's all about. We buried them for years. They were buried in Potter's Field, outside the fence. You need to go to the cemetery and see if that's what has been done historically in your cemetery, and see to it that that is fixed. and is never allowed to happen again.
Amazing. And okay, that one threw me. And you said that the reason they don't want Black people in certain cemeteries is because of what?
I think there's no other reason for it than thinking they don't know what they're going to do after they get down there. This is how ridiculous racism is. I can't be buried next to a Black person. That would destroy my image. I can't have Black persons in the same cemetery that I'm in because this is a white cemetery. You go to any southern state and you'll find cemeteries that are segregated according to skin color.
I've never heard of such a thing. Amazing.
Well, you need I'm not lying. I'm telling you the truth here. It's too bad, but that's the way it is.
I get it. I get it loud and clear. It's frightening. It's absolutely frightening that would be happening.
But they happen to be of many different skin colors. And I don't happen to judge people by the amount of chemical in their skin, because I think that's a pretty simple-minded and ignorant thing to do. You have to remember that racists are stupid because you can't fix stupid. They're ignorant, and you can fix ignorance with education. Yeah. And I don't mean training, and I don't mean indoctrination, and I don't mean guidance. I mean education, leading them out of ignorance. That is my job as an educator.
Okay. And for all of those people who want to help, we're sheltering in place a lot of places still, although they're opening up more and more of the United States and really the world. You know, people are unemployed predominantly. So how do people show their support and solidarity? How do we contribute to what's going on?
Well, number one, since you're sheltered in place, you can't go out of the house, and you can't go to your job, and your kids can't run around, that's the ideal time to get educated. That's the ideal time to start self-educating you and your children. Take at least half an hour of sustained silent reading every day, every morning and afternoon, so that you get an hour. And read things that are different from anything you have ever read before. Self-educate. This is the ideal opportunity for people to educate themselves. And if you don't want to buy the books, go to the library and read, sign out books. You can go to the library, put a mask on. Number one, wear a mask when you go outside the house. Do not follow the example of our exalted leader. Wear a mask when you go outside the house. Go to the library with your mask on and choose some books that will help you, but will help you to change your behavior and your beliefs. But be forewarned, if you're going to look for history books, you'll have to realize that the Black history is in a different section.
Yeah.
When you go to a bookstore, the Black history is in a different section. If you're going to read an historical novel, you'll see that the historical novels on the white section, the pictures of them making love and in a romantic situation are on the front cover. If it's a Black historical novel, the words and the picture are on the spine, and the cover isn't shown. It isn't standing on the shelf with the cover shown, depending on what the picture on the cover is. You don't catch on to these things until you are aware of, wait a minute, fool. You can have pictures of two people who are in a fairly nude situation, and you can show their skin, but if it's if it's a couple of a different color group, then the title and the picture are on the spine. If that doesn't tell you something, I don't know what will. Or go with me to a bookstore and watch a little old Black woman, that's what she called herself, a little old Black woman, walk up and try to write a check. She's got a book in her hand. She wants to write a check. And the clerk said, I have to have three acceptable forms of identification for that before you can write that check. So that woman dug in her purse until she got three out, and one of them wasn't good enough. So she had to dig out another. She had to have 4 forms of identification in order to write a check. She was from that city. And I watched and I thought, this isn't going to fly. I'm not going to go along with this. Now out comes my bitch. Make no mistake about this. So I walked up and I had 4 books in my hand because I have to learn a lot. I don't know much. I read a lot. So I walked up and I put the books on the counter and I said, it's all right if I write a check for these? Oh, yes, no problem. I wrote the check and I handed it to her. And she was going to put it in her drawer. And I said, wait a minute. Don't you want some identification on that check? And she said, no, I looked at the identification at the top. I said, wasn't the same identification on that last woman's? Well, that has nothing to do with you. I said, it has everything to do for me. Give me that back, that check. And I tore it up in little pieces and I sprinkled it on her desk. And I said, no, you keep these books. I don't do business with racist organizations. Thank you very much. And I walked out. I didn't get those 4 books. And the people behind me were absolutely incensed by what I had done. It's like the people who watch the film, The Eye of the Storm, and say to me, how could you do that to those poor little children for a day? And I say, wait a minute. Think of this fact. Those children went through that for a day at the hands of one person in a controlled classroom and knew that it was going to end at the end of the day. At the end of the day, we all got back together. And sometimes I even go so far as to show them this picture of us getting back together at the end of that day. I created a family with that exercise. We were closer after that day than we had ever been before.
And
I say we do it.
You
Yeah,
were close
I do
before.
it with,
In the very beginning.
right, I do it with,
very close.
yeah, I said I do it with one group, and they know it's over when they go home. And blacks have said to me, I'd go through a day of discrimination if I knew it was going to end forever. How lucky are white people that they have to go through it for one day, and when they leave that room, they can go back to business as usual. But after they've had the exercise, they never go back to business as usual because it has changed the way they see their words and their world. And these kids are different from any other kids that came out of the Riceville school.
I can imagine.
Because they are to this day opposed to the ignorance of racism.
And that was huge for where they lived. What was that, Riceville?
Oh yeah, it was huge, all right. Oh, my kids found out how it feels to have a mother who puts her head above the parapet, and everybody tries to shoot it off. And if they can't reach her, they'll get within the whatever and go after her kids, and that's what they did. And finally,
your kids hold that against you at all?
They did for years,
but now they
did, and I don't blame them at all. But I was their mother, and I finally got them out of it because the elementary principal's wife taught at the high school level, and she came to me during a teacher's meeting, educator's meeting. It was a teacher's meeting, and said, "Jane, you've got to get your kids out of here. These teachers are trying to destroy your children."
Oh,
yeah. So at that point, we moved out of Riceville. My kids didn't want to move. Their aunt and uncle both, and their grandparents, their grandmother and grandfather lived there. And they absolutely adored their grandfather. But things got so ugly for them. Didn't get ugly for me because I paid no attention to it. But it got ugly for my children. And they knew they could get to me through my children. It was horrible things happened to my children. So we moved them so they didn't have to take that. But I didn't leave. I took my kids out and put them in a new school. And we moved our home to a new location. But I went right back to teaching in Riceville. I never left Riceville until I got ready to move into a higher job. But yeah, it was ugly for my children. For my parents lost their business. My husband lost all his friends. And my kids lost all their friends. And, oh yeah.
And did your husband hold any of that against you?
No, he held a lot of things against me, but not that.
Okay.
No. At first he said, when I told him I was going to do the exercise that day, the day after Martin Luther King was killed, he said, "Jane, you're going to lose your job." I said, "I'd rather lose my job if I have to teach a lie in order to continue to teach in this community." He said, "We need that money. We've got children. We need that money." I said, "Well, I'll find a job somewhere else." He said, "Nobody else will ever hire you if you get fired from Riceville for doing this." I said, "I'm going to take a chance. I know that my superintendent won't feel that way. And I don't think my principal will feel that way. And I don't give a damn what the rest of them think." And I went to school and I did the exercise. And yeah, we got vilified and maligned and abused physically, emotionally, psychologically, and economically. But it didn't change the fact. And the fact is that pure ignorance keeps racism alive. Education could kill it. in 2 generations. Make no mistake about that, if we chose to do it. But you see, racism is extremely profitable. If you don't believe me, then you talk to the members of the Business Roundtable. Racism is what makes businesses like Walmart extremely successful. You can hire people at low wages and not pay them what you're supposed to not pay them for, things like Social Security, things like pension plans, hire them for less than an 8-hour day, keep them broke so that they can't get into good housing. And then when the housing, the land that you have allowed them to live on becomes valuable, you can have a real estate agent buy that land, kick you out of there, because if you have been not paid nothing but survival wages all your life, then you can't afford to make a change. So you have to make a change, and you have to go into housing that is just as bad as what you were trying to get out of, if you can find it. But sometimes you can't find it because all the neighborhoods are segregated. De jure segregation, built on racism. And if you don't believe me, then you read Richard Rothstein, and maybe you'll believe it.
Okay, I will.
We could have made a difference. We could have made a difference. I know you're going to be in trouble if you use all of this, and you won't use all of it, but at least use this.
We will. We're going to use a whole lot more than that, I guarantee you. So I want to say, Jane, that first of all, the world is a better place because you're in it, number one, okay? You obviously came here for a purpose. You have stood by that purpose. You have done an exceptional job. You might question that, but how exceptional you've been. But the fact that everybody is reaching out for you at this period of time of great turmoil, that tells you how important your stance, your voice.
My heroes are Black women.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my heroes are those women who keep on keeping on no matter what we do to them. What I know about racism and its effect, I have learned from listening to Black women, from reading Black women, from listening to Black women, to Black women who will allow me to make a mistake and then say, "You reading that?" And then I say, "Oh God, I did it again, didn't I?" "Yeah, you did it again, Jane, but you won't do it again. You won't do that one again, will you?" Never, ever, ever. They are kind enough, they are generous enough, they are capable enough, and they are wise enough to teach those of us who are this ignorant what we need to know in order to survive in the future. And what we need to know is that we all started from someone who looks like you. So don't try to make a hero, a heroine, a shero out of me, because that's not who, that's, if I know anything about racism that will help to solve this problem, it's because in my DNA, there is a certain percentage of my DNA that is Black.
Okay.
And as far as I'm concerned, that is what I relate to on a daily basis. How would it be if that DNA showed in my complexion? How would I relate to the things that this person is saying if I looked like what they don't want to recognize? No, I'm not a shero, but you are. You have the courage to listen to this, and then to go to somebody who's going to say, "We can't put that on the air," but you at least you're going to listen to it. And make no mistake about this. You and I are 30th to 50th cousins.
Oh, I know we are.
And if they give you a bad time, let me know. I will make them suffer. Thank you.
First of all, you're charming. You're so much fun. I know you know that. I've seen you in front of groups of people, and you just take over. I thank you so much for your time, your energy, and keep doing what you do, Jane. I wish you could.
I will.
I wish you could see more Janes. I know you.
I'm trying to.
I know you are.
I'm trying, but
I know
hey,
you are.
But oh well. There's not much money in doing what I do. Make no mistake about that. But there's tremendous satisfaction.
Satisfaction, absolutely. Yeah. And the world will remember. Thank you so much. Stay healthy, stay strong, and thank you for taking the time to be with the Institute for Global Transformation. We really appreciate it. Okay? Take good
Couldn't spend my Sunday in a better way.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Okay, you
Bye.
too. Goodbye now. Bye.